You can support this podcast at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
This week's Law & Order Marathon winner is Adrienne Jordan of Virginia Beach, Virginia. Adrienne will get a marathon decal showing she watched 26.2 hours of her favorite crime show. To be next week's winner, sign up at lawandorderpodcast.com.
I'm Kevin Flynn with Rebecca Lavoie and Alex Beam, and these are their stories.
You think you know who did it, but you don't know who did it. Law and order, law and order, law and order. It's no ordinary police procedural, baby. It's the affinity of police procedurals, baby. Law and order, law and order, law and order, law and order. These are their stories, these are their stories.
Welcome to These Are Their Stories, the podcast about network TV's most enduring crime franchise and the real-life cases that inspired their shows. I'm Kevin Flynn. Each podcast will break down an episode from either Criminal Intent, SVU, or The Mothership, and today we're looking at Law & Order Original Recipe, Season 13, Episode 4, Tragedy on Rye.
So the possible time of death is somewhere between noon and 1, 3 days ago.
So a girl gets shot over a busy restaurant and no one hears anything?
Joining me to do just that is true crime author and the host of Crime Writers On and Slate's Mom and Dad Are Fighting podcasts, Rebecca Lavoie. Hello, Rebecca.
Hello, Kevin. I prefer pumpernickel myself, just for the record.
For tragedies.
Yes.
They should be
I like
on
my tragedies on pumpernickel.
All right.
Or sourdough.
Or sourdough.
Or marble, for that matter.
Oh, that's the with some nice with a little bit of mustard. It's fantastic.
A little scooch. Yes.
A little scooch. Rounding out our panel is our very special guest, author and Globe columnist Alex Beam. Hello, Alex.
How do you do? Happy to be here.
Legit journalist.
Yeah.
I know. This is so
None of that
unusual.
Slate digital nonsense, man. I print on pulp.
That's right. Hey, now you were the Moscow bureau chief for Newsweek.
For Business
Excuse
Week.
me, for
a long
Business
time
Week,
ago.
right?
Yes, I was, in fact.
A journalism fellow at Stanford and a longtime columnist with the Boston Globe. Shouldn't you be investigating graft instead of watching Law & Order like the rest of us?
I always took a break between 4 and 6 p.m. in my busy day when the TNT, TNT used to have Law & Order in the afternoons. And I've been in semi-permanent mourning ever since that situation changed. But I even have an anecdote relating to that. My home was burgled one afternoon between 4 and 6 when I was in my basement watching Law & Order. Yeah. And my wife has never let me forget it.
Commitment.
That must have been a really good episode. You must have been really into it.
They're all really good, okay? Give me a break. Wait.
This is before surround sound. It's somebody broke a window. This is a really good episode. They mixed this well.
I am the object of so much mockery in my house for that and for other reasons, of course.
Alex, great novels are often based on real-life events. You've got Peyton Place, Psycho, The Godfather, Murder on the Orient Express, as well as taking, cues from real historical events. So using a rip-from-the-headlines event as a writing prompt, how do you feel about that?
How do I feel about it?
Yeah.
I'm good with it. I mean, Tolstoy did that with War and Peace, right? There was a battle right outside his window, figuratively speaking, 50 years before he was born, but none of that's important. I'm okay with rip from the headlines, although I'm looking forward to the latter part of this podcast because I'm not 1,000% sure which headlines this particular episode was ripped from.
Yeah, it's actually pretty close when we get there, but I don't want to give it away.
Yeah. I actually thought War and Peace was based on that song, War, What Is It Good For? I mean, isn't that what we learned on Seinfeld?
I apologize, for 19th century literary references, exactly. And correct on you for throwing it back in my face.
That's okay.
Yeah,
That's okay.
Okay.
We will not let snobbery stand on this crappy podcast.
This is not a crappy podcast. I've listened to it. It's a good podcast. I drove 14 miles to come here, so I won't be sold short.
Alex, of all the franchises, do you have a favorite detective team?
Favorite Law and Order detective team?
I'd have to, well, first of all, Orbach, because my late mother loved Orbach. And I like this team a lot. Tastes vary, but I like Ed Green and Briscoe and Green is my favorite.
I think all of our journalist friends have said that, with the exception of Amber Hunt, who liked Elton and
Elton and the guy from Blackish.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, Anthony Anderson?
Yeah, I think he's great.
Well, he's
like
great.
Him a lot, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like I've never heard anyone really stand up for Benjamin Bratt. I mean, who, to have been married to Julia Roberts is like quite an accomplishment in my view. So I always had kind of a soft spot for him. Were they ever
married, or were they just engaged?
I know. No, that's a good fact check. I'm not exactly sure. But he was sort of like the quote unquote the Hispanic one, right? I mean,
yes.
which I always thought
the handsome Latino.
Yes, he was a handsome Latino, and he had trouble at home. I mean, my heart went out to him. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, he was a fictional character, though, so he really didn't have trouble at home.
Wait, no, he did have trouble at home because I devoted a lot of my life to worrying about his trouble at home. In fact, it was very sad about his wife. Now you guys are just laughing at his misfortune.
No, clearly the lines between fact and fiction are blurry for this guest, and I think we should respect that.
I can definitely see Alex in his basement weeping over Curtis's wife's MS while somebody's stealing his refrigerator upstairs.
He had 3 daughters, man. It was like a heavy thing.
It was a heavy thing.
Hey, Alex, do you have a favorite prosecutorial team?
Favorite Law and Order District Attorney Prosecutorial Team.
I like Waterston where he is. This is a good episode for Fred Thompson as newly introduced DA. Why are you guys laughing?
I think you mean Fred Dalton Thompson, right?
I'm not running for president, pal. I can call him what I want. DA Arthur Branch, this is a good I don't like. He's not my favorite DA but this is a good episode. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I don't want to get too nerdy on you, but we're 4 into his career here, right? This is, I believe, only the 4th episode of his. He's a newly elected DA. He's not my favorite, but he's good in this episode. I mean, I'd have to say I'm not a Ben Stone guy. I'm the other guy. I'm the older guy, the Arthur guy.
Oh, okay.
The insurance guy.
Schiff?
Yeah, I'm an Adam Schiff guy.
Yeah.
The insurance guy? Did he sell insurance at one point?
Ameritrade.
I think he did.
Yeah, I think he's selling insurance, yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
He did well. I liked Adam Schiff. I mean, because he was so world-weary and stuff.
Yeah.
But this guy's like okay, and I really didn't like Waterston once he took the job. He ceased to interest me.
But you like Waterston as a prosecutor?
I do like. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm committed to lifelong learning. I mean, this is one of those. I hadn't realized that Jack McCoy. To me, he really was a kind of god, flawless marble statue. But once you learn more and more about him, this is certainly one of his. I mean, there are chinks in his arm, whatever inappropriate metaphor you want to bring forward. This is a good episode for people who wrote their PhDs on Jack McCoy,
right? Because
you get some hints about his weaknesses.
Yeah.
2 of them specifically.
I agree. Actually, this is a really interesting prosecutorial episode in a way that many of the Serena Sutherland episodes are not. This is an interesting one.
This is a very interesting one. Although, again, I don't want to get too nerdy. I'm not the guy, but it's
I think you are. Sorry.
No, I'm not the guy, but it's premonitory of Serena Sutherland's final episode.
Right? It kind of is.
All right, we'll get there.
Now you keep saying that.
We'll get there.
Maybe we won't get there.
Oh, we will. We promise.
All right, now let's look at the first half of the episode Law & Order, Season 13, Episode 4, Tragedy on Rye. Found in the apartment above a famous Manhattan deli, one Lucy Dolan, struggling actress and musician. Despite her floundering career, her place is packed with high-end accoutrements, including one of them being one of them newfangled flat-screen TVs.
Doc says a single 357 round to the chest did the trick.
Went right through her. Right in the middle of lunch, too. Looks like Kung Pao chicken.
Yeah. Be sure to get back to us on that.
A pair of tourists looking to catch a glimpse of a celebrity at the deli get videotape of, quote, 3 suspicious characters. 2 of them carrying Lucy's TV, or it could have been Alex's for all we know, tracing the license plate.
Oh, my God. Those same burglars.
Tracing the license plate and a Horse Track VIP sticker. Briscoe and Green nab the pair who took the TV. The third guy is still at large, and these 2 have no criminal history. When a high-rolling defense attorney shows up for them, the detectives get an idea. Ed Green, who is the whitest black cop ever on television.
Oh, that's so painful.
I'm not sure that's true.
Yeah, I totally disagree, by the way. Yeah.
He channels his inner gangster and goes to the law office and poses as a friend of the suspect. They learn his name is Danny Odom, They find Lucy's TV in his apartment, and when Danny walks in on them and reaches for his waistband, Green jumps him and places him under arrest. Okay, let's start right at the beginning. They really, really, really want us to know this is an authentic Jewish deli.
This is the Carnegie Deli, right? It's like the faux Carnegie Deli. They do everything they possibly can with a long shot of like the very fat pastrami sandwich.
Mind the register, boy chick. Mind it. Don't help yourself. But, Ganef.
In the first 6 seconds, you get Ganef, Zaftig, Oy vey, boy chick. They have all these, like air quote Jews they've drafted. And go on.
It's like the writer's room was like, guys, how do we telegraph this? How do we telegraph that this is a Jewish deli? And how do we let people in Wisconsin understand what that means? And every stereotype was thrown in the first 30 seconds of the episode.
Okay, if we want this Jewish deli owner to find the body, what interjection would he use? I'm feeling oy vey. What do you guys?
I think that sounds about right.
I think we can go with oy vey. Yeah.
Okay, I got to first off one inaccuracy.
I always wanted to learn guitar.
It's actually a bass, a Rickenbacker.
Is that good?
It was good enough for Elvis.
Oh, now you're in my neck of the woods.
I'm actually talking about Elvis Costello.
Who's on first?
Of course, we all know that Elvis Costello did not play the bass.
No, only you know that.
No, if it's a Rickenbacker, Green is obviously thinking of Paul McCartney.
Yes, but only you would know that. I don't think it's an obvious
and you're
correction.
kind of stepping on one. They're so proud of that Elvis joke that you're almost being unfair to the writers.
It is. I think it's also supposed to be like generational, right? That
Precisely,
Green knows something that Briscoe doesn't. And it's also, I think, ironically, even though we just gave you crap for calling Green a super white black cop, I think it is supposed to telegraph a little bit of Green's, quote, whiteness, that he's like one of the, people who would know the difference between Elvis Costello. I mean, that's what I thought that was supposed to mean.
He's long into new wave.
It seemed very
music.
obvious.
Rebecca, if I could do 15 podcast episodes of you talking about fashion as far as a podcast, I get one Elvis Costello
15
reference.
podcast episodes about Mariska Hargitay's makeup and hair.
Right. Now, Alex, the landlord is trying to tell him that the girl was an actress in a movie with all that dancing.
She was in that movie, where all the kids are dancing.
Fame?
The other one.
So what film is he talking about, and who else is on that IMDb page?
Oh, well, I'm sorry. Do you want me to drop the name of my friend Michael Gore, who wrote the score for Fame? Or is that too early for that?
Oh,
no,
shoot.
You could do that.
Okay, fine. Then I think I'll do that right now. I thought they talk about Fame. That's what it is.
They mention it, but I think they were referring to Dirty Dancing. Were they not?
I think they were.
And aren't you just now making a Degrees of Kevin Bacon joke when you make that? Who else was on that IMDb page reference? Is that what you're trying to do?
I was going to say
Jerry
Irene
Orbach.
Cara.
Oh
my!
Jerry Orbach put Baby in the Corner in that
right,
movie.
Dirty Dancing.
Oh,
that's
how can you
right.
take Fame away from me? Because they specifically mentioned Fame.
Fame
in the
was
show.
great, but I think what was really going on is the guy is saying she was in Dirty Dancing, and Green wants to say, "What a coincidence! So is my partner."
Oh my.
That's right.
That's some really good exegesis by you, by the way. Very
right.
impressive. Very impressive.
Very, very good.
Wow.
I love any reference to Jerry Orbach's outside career made on this show.
Like when he plays pool or
love
something?
when he plays pool. I love when he calls himself, and in one episode he refers to himself as a song and dance man, as a joke, and you're like, that's not a joke. It's true.
Greatest ever. Greatest ever.
Now the tourists from Ohio.
Oh, man, fuck kettle.
They,
The racist tourists from Ohio.
Like they are
Anti-Semitic tourists from Ohio. I'm sorry, go on.
Well, they are so green. If they don't know who in the deli is a real celebrity, but they do know enough to sell their videotape to a TV station,
That's
right?
right.
Wait a minute, are you going to skip over that kind of edgy line about who's in the deli?
Hey, shove over. You're blocking the window. I got Woody Allen in the crosshairs.
You Casey, that's just some other Jew.
The silent majority.
Should stay that way.
That's right. That's right.
Great
and then,
line.
Briscoe, I believe, calls them the silent majority.
Yeah, exactly. Premonitory, I would say, of America in 2018.
It's pretty incredible. They're real podunk, but they do, in fact, know they can sell the tape. It's an excellent point, Kevin. It's one I had not thought of. I was so distracted by the blatant anti-Semitism of this couple.
Well, if you didn't know Alex Beam and you couldn't get to, a major metropolitan newspaper, immediately you would go to W whatever and
That's
say,
right.
I have this videotape. It shows 3 black guys leaving a building where a murder happened.
That's right.
How much do you want for it?
I do enjoy, though, I think it was Briscoe who said they want to put out an APB for 2 badly dressed out-of-towners when they saw them on the video camera.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah.
With their, like, mom slacks.
Yeah, they were great, and they missed their plane. It was very sad. Lieutenant Van Buren made them miss. I mean,
That's right.
I
Next
don't know.
plane's in 4 hours, release them in 3.5.
Release them in 3.5. I used to live in New York, man. 30 minutes to get to LaGuardia. I don't think so. Yikes. Big problem.
Now, you got to remember that these 3 guys are supposed to be about one level above street dealer,
Yeah.
right? On the drug, hierarchy. Now, unless you are Scarface Kingpin level, why do you have a luxury suite at the horse track? Who does that?
Wasn't like one of them's uncle, like the owner of a shoe store, like another avenue that was never explored? My assumption was that the box belonged to the uncle of one of those guys, the shoe store owner, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe?
Precisely. Also, I mean, if it had been the dog track, it might have been a little more sort of congruent with the facts. But it wasn't anyway. Usually you get OTB in Law & Order, but here you had the actual thing, which was a real kind of welcome departure.
Yeah, somebody with their own car and their special sticker.
And actual horses.
That's right.
Actual horses.
So are we just glossing over like the whole First Amendment issue at play here in the first half of this episode where Serena has to go to court
For prior restraint.
to obtain the opportunity for the cops to see the tape on which Moe and Curly, quote, are identified?
Alex,
wait,
were you screaming at the TV, Alex, about Near versus Minnesota? And
No, but that's a highly, highly rare example where not only are they attempting a prior restraint on a news organization, which the lawyers everyone admits is completely out of the question. But second of all, they're successful.
That's right.
They find a complacent judge.
Well, Mr. Willett, is 24 hours going to put an overly large kink in your colon?
That's not the point, Judge.
Of course, there's always a chance that I linger over the people's application. My clerk gets lost in Westlaw for a couple of days, and your tape becomes yesterday's news, literally.
are you saying that Law & Order isn't always accurate in the way it depicts the legal system?
Yeah.
Okay, I think it's 100% accurate.
Can I just say what I love about that whole scenario is that they get the tape for 24 hours before the TV station can air it, right? And they're like, then it'll be yesterday's news, whatever. So they are now treating this 24 hours like it is the most critical. It's like
Kiefer Sutherland
totally.
is going to be rushing in, right?
And they identify the dudes, and she's like, "We have just 23 hours to catch them." I'm like, no, actually, you have as long as you want to catch them. That whole 24-hour thing is arbitrary. It depends on them actually watching what, like WEXR or whatever stupid network bought this thing. It's a fake deadline.
It wasn't WPIX.
I thought it added a lot of immediacy.
Urgency?
A lot of urgency. Yeah, they need to make their case very quickly, which plays into this other issue that we're going to discuss. Did they perhaps act peremptorily?
Maybe. But it did lead to that amazing scene of both Briscoe and Green sitting in the parking lot of the racetrack.
Third race, I gotta go with Ed's Pepper.
You gotta be kidding.
She's a gray. I always bet the gray.
And you wonder why you always lose.
She's got the inside post.
Yeah, man, and the first rule of racing is from the rail to the jail.
We do have, I believe, a Hey, It's That Guy.
We do?
Hey, it's that guy.
Who possibly knows the actor who played recurring character crime scene tech Julian Beck?
Nope.
Nobody,
No,
right?
no.
Okay, well, that is actor John Cariani.
Looking for a moment frozen in time.
It's almost poetic.
Yeah, so what am I doing in DMV, right?
You might remember him from the Onion News Networks. His assignment was autistic reporter Michael Falk.
Oh, God.
He's the one who did a story like train ran over a man, but fortunately the train was not damaged.
That's right. Oh.
This is an actual Law and Order character?
Yes.
Yeah.
Different.
It's very obscure.
Yeah.
Hey, it's that guy reference, though.
Yeah. Julian Beck, I guess he was in about 20 different episodes, and you get like these guys that go and...
Is he the forensics guy who eventually testifies, or is he the DMV guy?
He's a DMV guy. Apparently he has many skills. He can take a fingerprint.
I see.
He can figure out traffic cameras.
He's not the guy who talks about the palm print on the wall. It's not that guy.
That's our old forensics guy. He's a recurring character.
Yeah. I liked that scene, actually, when he like demonstrated how the palm print would have gotten in that spot. It was clever.
Yeah, because you need to pull it off the wall. By the way, Alex, did you check the wall near your TV where it was stolen?
Oh, stop it.
I'm just saying, there was probably prints.
How many times in this era of Law and Order has there been a scene where there's a missing flat screen TV? That seems to happen a lot. Like when the flat screen TVs were new, like that seemed to be like a tell.
Well,
right?
they said it cost. They said it cost $6,000. Where today you go to
$600?
Best Buy. Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Now Jesse L. Martin gets to channel his inner Stringer Bell.
Yep.
And go undercover as a drug dealer seeking legal representation.
There's two brothers enjoying the hospitality of a certain city agency.
There are a lot more than two.
Yeah, but Mr. Mann is representing these two. Matter of fact, he went by and visited them today at the behest of one of my colleagues.
Listen. The best part about that is that he basically just borrowed Logan's old jacket, and like that turned him into like a gangster.
Like Logan left his jacket
Literally.
behind?
That's a very lame scene. I actually think, as a rule, you guys are frankly a little bit too harsh on L&O. But that is a very lame scene because he's chewing gum like a gangsta.
Yeah.
Like gangsters chew gum?
Yeah.
Like in what universe do freaking and he has this like leather jacket.
Yeah, it's Logan's old jacket, and it's supposed to make him look like a criminal. Meanwhile, Logan wore that as a cop every day on this damn show.
Right, and the highly naive yet critically attractive African American receptionist.
He's gorgeous.
She's
I thought you were
gorgeous.
talking about Jesse L.
No. She lets the cat out of the bag. The whole thing is totally improbable.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, yeah.
There's some guy here wants to talk to you. How did he pull off the?
Wants to talk about Danny Odom.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Job done. Check.
Where did he go? Poof, there was this little poof of dust, and he was out the door.
Yep.
I don't know where
you
he
needed
went
to ask also if that was entirely legal. That kind of evidence gathering. I thought that was he's going to get a rap in the knuckles, but it turns out he got a rap in the knuckles for an actual rap in the knuckles.
That's right.
Yep.
Rebecca, how well did Jesse L. Martin / Ed Green pull off being gangster?
It's far too gorgeous for that. Next question.
Yeah, far too white for that.
Well, he listens to Elvis Costello in The Attraction, so.
Yeah.
Now let's look at the second half of this episode. All three defendants have their own lawyers, but it's Danny Odom's attorney who's running the show. Their story is that Lucy was dealing drugs and owed Danny money. He took the TV as collateral, and the murder happened after they left. Also, they filed a civil rights suit against Green, saying the black cop racially profiled the black defendant when he injured him during the arrest. The civil suit is just leverage against the state, so new DA Arthur Branch counters with a press conference.
The people of this city owe these officers a debt of gratitude. It is the conclusion of this office, based on the particular circumstances of this crime and the overwhelming evidence of guilt, that the death penalty, although very rarely sought in this county, is appropriate.
The civil suit is dismissed after a neighbor testifies he heard Green identify himself as a cop. But Branch says they'll still proceed with the death penalty, even for the two who only stole the TV. McCoy and Sutherland are shocked, not used to their conservative boss, which is surprising because we all know he must have campaigned literally on a platform of, quote, law and order. At trial, the defense uses cell phone traffic patterns to establish Lucy sold drugs. At closing, they argue the state is pursuing the defendants just because they're black, but the jury convicts all three anyway. McCoy re-examines Lucy's phone records and noticed one number stopped calling after she was killed, but before she was discovered. Briscoe and Green find the murder weapon and bust that guy instead. The defendants are released, and even though he nearly sent 3 innocent men to death row, Branch says, "Come on, guys, steak dinner's on me."
Ooh, indeed.
Okay, let's try not to get too deep into the thicket of racial politics here, where we have 3...
The show didn't. Why should we?
Yeah, okay. How about Green's reaction to hearing he's being sued in federal court?
Odom names the city, the department, and you individually in his suit. He claims you profiled him.
Right. He's a drug dealer and a murderer.
And he's black.
Have you looked at me recently?
Yeah. No, it was interesting because I think the quandary that it presents us as viewers is that we actually saw the takedown, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, I am like a justice-minded person, but that was fair. They didn't kick him extra when he was down. They took the guy down, put his arms behind his back because he looked like he was reaching for a gun. The viewer could see he was reaching for a gun. So it was interesting to me that Van Buren's reaction was to like take them into her office, and when she says shut the door, it's like they are in trouble.
Oh, yes.
Because the viewer is presented with like a relatively clean arrest and a fair arrest, and then I don't know if we're supposed to ask the question, I don't think we are supposed to ask the question, did Green do anything wrong, right? We're not supposed to ask that question.
Well, it didn't look like a particularly rough takedown, certainly, but it was taken very, very they'd given away a chess piece, alas, and so then they had to counter with the idea of putting everyone up against the wall and shooting them, which was kind of a very powerful counter move.
It was insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, so it served the episode well.
But they kind of dispatched this whole like plot twist pretty quickly.
Very quickly. Almost suspiciously. But I mean, it is a very rich episode because Sutherland has to go into the CPA and threaten him totally inappropriately with putting him out of business.
It's like leverage.
Unless he testifies, he says, the black guys basically are going to kill me if I testify against them. She says, yeah, well, I'll take away your license and you'll never work in this town or any other town for that matter. So she's a tough gal, and I'm not sure that's exactly legal either.
Yeah, but wasn't it interesting, though, when Van Buren went to confront Branch, and it was clear like the first time they'd ever had like a face-to-face one-on-one, and she basically went there to tell him like,
what my problem is? If we fry Carton and Johnson, the next time my officers find themselves in a similar situation, the bad guys may just shoot to kill. What the hell? They'd be facing the death penalty anyway.
You want to talk next time? What about the next time 3 punks hit a 7-Eleven? You want the two without the gun to get a pass when their buddy blows the cashier's face off? That's not the message I want to send for all the next times.
It was a super interesting scene that got weird fast. And like there was a little bit of like him putting her in her place, which I think as a viewer, we're supposed to realize like this guy's going to be a problem for all of our liberal-minded cop friends.
Yeah. Now, Alex, what Van Buren said when she went to Branch was that she was afraid if he goes ahead with this gambit, that what will happen is that the bad guys are going to shoot first and ask questions later when it comes to cops.
Right. She's worried about losing cops. If the bad guys are under kind of a blanket threat of getting the needle, and as Sutherland says, they walked away with a television set and now they're going to face capital punishment. Van Buren's very concerned about that. That's a very strange scene, frankly. I can't really imagine a detective lieutenant engaging the district attorney of Manhattan County. And he says to her, well, I'm trying to save one of your cops, which again sounds like a very unusual kind of motive for that district attorney. And she says I wish you wouldn't save my cops so much as I wish you wouldn't put all these black people to death.
Right.
Now, there is obviously a new sheriff in town with Branch.
Yep.
He's a conservative cast in Fred Thompson's own image. Now, for this era of Law and Order, the conflict is no longer Adam Schiff kind of humming and hawing with the skepticism at McCoy's dubious interpretations of the law. It's now about political views.
Right.
Putting somebody to death for stealing a television is reprehensible.
Vox clamatis from the moral left.
A death sentence for Carton or Johnson would be cruel and unusual punishment.
Only it seems to me we've got enough evidence for 2 cases on this one. The only thing we don't have is a busload of nuns as eyewitnesses. I mean, am I wrong? Do we know these punks are guilty or don't we?
They're guilty, but Arthur, are you sure this is the best case for you to prove a point?
You don't like to be sandbagged. I don't like the race card thrown in my face.
Hey.
Well, you've got to admit you're not the typical New York City district attorney.
Now, for these 5 seasons that we have Fred Thompson, does that kind of tension serve the Law and Order storytelling well? What do you think, Alex?
I really would have to defer to the two of you guys because I think you probably know the canon of Fred Thompson more deeply than I do. He is a lawmaker in this episode, which is highly unusual. He views himself as sort of, judge, jury, etc., and he quotes himself very pompously.
I think it's so good when he does that.
Now, if he does that for 5 seasons, and I suppose he does, I mean, it's basically BS, and he's not my favorite DA, as I said in the beginning.
Well, for me, is like an opportunity for the cast of, the legal team on the show, the prosecutors in particular, to discuss the ethics of what's happening actually out in the world. I mean, what year was this episode?
I think 2004.
Right. This is like the post 9/11, George W. Bush era. all of the Patriot Act laws, which really shaped a lot of the criminal justice stuff that was that's really still happening in America now. And this is the show's way of dealing with it, is putting like a substitute, conservative in the boss spot on the show, so they get to have these debates in the script. I think it's interesting. I mean, it's, to me, as much as I think I'm like the only one loved Diane Wiest as like the temporary DA.
Yeah, she's great.
She's so sweet, and she's so soft in her sort of approach to everything, and so liberal in her approach to everything, that it was really unrealistic, in a lot of cases. And there is a huge unrealistic thing that happens.
What does Branch mean in this episode when he says, I don't like having the race card played?
Yes, he's basically saying, you're calling me a racist because I put these kids on a death penalty case. But then he also calls them out and them calling him a carpetbagger because he's like a lifelong New Yorker. He's been in New York for decades?
He said 30 years.
I thought 20.
20, 30.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. He's still a carpetbagger. He's always going to be a carpetbagger.
Oy vey.
That is a totally recognizable political talking point. I mean, let's talk about right now. I mean, we don't like to get too political on the show, but let's talk about the fact that right now, a lot of people on the conservative side of politics will say, don't politicize, in quotes, race, as if the civil rights movement and politics had nothing to do with one another. It's a popular talking point, I think.
I know, but I'm confused how Branch is playing this. He's being accused of railroading 3 young black guys, right? But he seems okay with that. He has a Southern accent. So I found it all a little counterpuntal for me. Because I couldn't. He refers to his own motives as electoral in nature,
right?
But so then I'm okay. I'm actually politically a little bit conservative. So I mean, for me, that's the real world. That's how you get elected DA in a lot of districts. Is railroading young black kids, right? And we built a republic on that. Or should I not be saying that?
Well, I think that it's not inaccurate. So I think it's fair to say.
No, I mean, I'm afraid it's not. So,
but I think to kind of close the loop on this thought, that what we used to have with Schiff was the tension of, I don't want you doing this crazy Hail Mary legal argument.
Right. It's got to be constitutional.
Now it's like, we want to zig, and Branch says, no, we're going to zag.
Yeah.
Yes, and you've made it clear for me, and the word we're not using is conscience. I thought Schiff, again, my favorite, Schiff was kind of the conscience, right,
Mm-hmm.
of the legal profession and of the office, and so much older. He was kind of their superego / conscience, and Dalton Thompson's off on another jag entirely.
Now, Sutherland is struggling with this whole death penalty issue. She tells this story about walking home from midnight mass.
And all the way home, the only thing I could think about was what's wrong with me. Why aren't I like all of those people who actually believe the words that they're singing?
Maybe it was the eggnog your Uncle Harry slipped you.
My point is, right now, I'm more convinced than ever that this job would be a lot easier if I was one of those people from St. Bart's. At least then, making a decision about taking a man's life wouldn't be so excruciating.
So it took 60 more episodes to get there, but it is a little foreshadowing of her dismissal from the district attorney's office.
Now, she didn't say she didn't want to be as good as they did. She said she wanted to believe. She not that she wanted to. She always knew she wouldn't be the kind of person who could believe what they were talking about in the church, that she wasn't getting anything from it. She didn't believe.
Yeah, that's another confusing message, because it was the certainty that she referred to, because then they confused the whole thing by pointing out that true believing Christians, again, which I sort of am, oppose the death penalty. But that wasn't what she was relating to her church experience.
No, she was, I think, just talking about the sort of blind faith in the system. Because in that same scene, very shortly after that, is when she calls Jack a cop-out, because he says, the reason this doesn't bother me that we're going for this death penalty thing, because he invites her for like a drink, and she's like, nope. Which, by the way, maybe that's foreshadowing too, but that's another topic. But he says it doesn't bother me because that's why we have judges and that's why we have juries who trust the system. And she's like, that's a cop-out. And I'm like, she actually does believe something, right? Yeah. She believes that the death penalty shouldn't exist.
I mean, and there's the C word again, conscience. And I mean, I know where you're going with that foreshadowing, but it's only like about a minute and a half later that he offers her a cab ride home, and she says, quote, I'd rather walk.
Yeah.
So she twice
rejects,
pushes back.
I think
is the term we're looking for here.
Yeah, but of course later she gets fired because she is an advocate and not a.
She's accused of being an advocate, not a prosecutor. Yes,
but we know it's actually. Is this because because I'm a lesbian.
Oh, I can't believe you said that. What about all the people who are waiting to see that amazing episode?
Oh, please.
Did we spoil it?
I think we've talked about that about 100 times on this podcast, that amazing scene where Arthur Branch says, "You're fired," and she says, "Is it because I'm a terrible actress?"
That's more like
Oh, no, you guys are too cruel. She's a great actress. There you have it.
You are a Christian.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, of course he gets his conviction, but McCoy just can't stop looking at the evidence.
As we know prosecutors do, right? After they get a win,
it's like, oh,
they keep trying to lose.
They have second thoughts. They're scratching their heads.
No, this wasn't just a slam dunk. It kind of went around the rim a little bit.
Yeah, we know. Prosecutors hate winning. They just hate it.
So he comes up with this. He says, hey, there is this one guy who stopped calling, so he must have known that she was dead. That's probable cause. Kick in that door.
Yeah. This is like they have how many lawyers on that side of the room? Like 3 high-paid, high-profile lawyers over there right now?
Okay, and then if you want to get down in the racial gutter with me, not with... So that the door they choose to kick in is like this manatee-sized black man basically like wallowing in an ocean of cocaine and firearms. He's like the black Al Pacino. So in other words, they could just have guilty just sort of right on top of the screen.
That's right. After having all of these quasi-sensitive racial conversations on the show, basically they bust into the most stereotypical black drug dealer's house in the history of the show.
So McCoy fixes the mistake like he always does. We convicted the wrong guys. I'll go fill out the paperwork, get him released.
Yes, Branch, who has just given a lofty press conference many times over about how he wants to fry these young boys, can't wait now to release them.
He's like, well, I have that form. It's right in my top drawer. I'm always pulling it out.
Fill out the paperwork. Yeah, great.
It's already pre-signed. I just have to put the date in at the top. There we go.
Oh, man.
It was really unbelievable. We all know, anybody who follows criminal justice cases at all, which of course we do, even when it's known that somebody is innocent or was wrongfully convicted, it can still be years before
they're not admitting it at all.
No.
That was a great moment in the night of. I don't know if you discussed that on your other podcast, but remember, they actually go through. They know they've got the wrong guy, but they're faithful to the prosecutorial ethic. Mm-hmm. They convict the wrong guy, and then they go back. They fail to convict, but they try to convict the wrong guy, and then the very next thing is he goes to the prosecutor and says, "Now let's go get the right guy and put him behind bars."
Yeah, that happens all the time.
Okay.
Well, let's take a look at the real-life story that inspired this episode. It's time for Ripped from the Headlines.
You think you know who did it. You think you know who did it. But you don't know who did it. You don't know who did it. Ripped from the Headlines.
This episode is based on a deadly stick-up that came to be known as the Carnegie Deli Massacre, a marijuana operation that catered to famous musicians was being run out of an apartment above the famous New York City eatery. The dealer was Jennifer Stahl, an actress who had a bit part in the movie Dirty Dancing. In May 2001, right in the middle of a theatre crowd rush, 2 men were seen entering the building. Stahl was entertaining 4 friends when the intruders barged in. They shot all 5 people execution style and ran off with $1,000 and 6 ounces of pot. Despite the shots to the head, 2 of the victims survived and were able to telephone the police. The next day, authorities announced their suspects were Andre Smith and Sean Sally. Smith turned himself in, but Sally wasn't nicked by the coppers until his picture showed up on America's Most Wanted. Fears of the shooting signalled a return to Times Square's dodgy days never came to pass. Smith and Sally were both sentenced to 25 years to life. After 80 years in operation, the famous Carnegie Deli closed on New Year's Eve 2016.
Okay, well, sure enough, the victim had been in Dirty Dancing.
Wow.
With Jerry Orbach.
Now, that's a detail I did not know.
Do you think this is where Jerry Orbach got all his weed?
Oh. Was Jerry a hophead? You can't back that up.
No, I can't back that up
at all.
You have
no foundation, as they say on Law & Order.
If he were.
Do you think he pitched this story? You know,
it's like, you know what would make this really, really realistic? No, Jerry, what? Well, the guy you arrest could have been a teacup from Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, maybe. But I don't know. I wonder if Jerry Orbach, when they were filming this, had insight. I mean, this was somebody he worked with, right?
Yeah. Well, you're in New York. You spent a lot of time in New York. It looks like that they filmed at the actual Carnegie Deli. Am I wrong?
I don't know.
You're dead
I haven't
wrong.
been to
That
the
doesn't
Carnegie.
That's not like no.
No. I've been to Carnegie Deli plenty of times.
Yeah, it didn't. It certainly didn't.
That was some
Deli with photos on the wall. I'm wrong. I got that mixed up.
It
with
looked
some
like a
other deli.
restaurant. It didn't look like a deli.
Yeah, it was some interior they found.
Yeah,
in,
the Carnegie Deli
Queens
is a
or
little
something.
more like deli looking.
It's more stylish.
Yeah.
Really has black mahogany. Blah 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 blah.
Oh yeah. All right. So I definitely would not have. They definitely would have said, "Oh yeah, that was a really great time in our history. Come in and shoot here and remind everybody about the shooting upstairs."
No, they make so much more money in like 20 minutes than they would ever let.
Yeah, and
Law
they have
Order come in.
franchises. You know, we went to the Carnegie Deli in Las Vegas, remember? In
Yeah.
the Mirage Hotel.
Yes. Yeah.
Where they, in fact, I believe, had, when we went, a newspaper article about the Carnegie Deli Massacre, like framed in the fake Carnegie Deli.
So I guess
in Las Vegas.
the pain had worn off in Vegas by that
so.
time.
Oh man.
Well, there are 3 Carnegie Deli locations in Manhattan, and the big one, the famous one, is the one that closed last year, and I
Right.
guess the other 2 are still in operation, if Wikipedia is correct,
Well,
which it often is.
good to know you've done your
done my
research
research.
and your
Yeah.
fact-checking in front of this esteemed journalist we have as a guest.
Oh please. Don't lay on the mustard quite so thick. Okay.
Well, for a deli, yeah.
Yeah.
You'd want to, and a little horseradish with it as well. Now, we recently had the episode about the Puerto Rican Day Parade riots, and now the Carnegie Deli Massacre. And these were that happened in New York in this area post-gentrification, pre-9/11. So this little sliver of time.
The real-life crimes.
The real life, right. Both of those real-life crimes happened in 2001.
Right.
In 2001. And it's like for New Yorkers, in that time, there was this sort of fear, at least as it was portrayed in the newspapers, that, we knew it. Times Square is going to go back to being the way it was, and this couldn't have lasted. All these horrible crimes are going to happen, and the city's going to be unsafe again.
Right.
As somebody who was, I'm sure, a newspaper man, you were working for the magazines at that, right?
Yeah, but I was in New York in the 70s.
Oh, okay.
When things were really dangerous.
It was a real shithole.
Yeah. Oh, I can't believe you said that. Oh no, I'm quitting.
But that's what people were afraid of. There were a lot of people who still have that image in their mind of, New York go to hell or drop dead or whatever Jerry Ford apparently said.
Yeah.
And so that they seemed like, oh no, this those were really good times.
Right.
But it obviously isn't going to last.
No, I mean, I can't imagine like running into a New Yorker today and talking to them and asking them whether or not they think the gentrification will last. I mean, the city has changed. I mean, growing up, right outside of the city and going to the city my entire young life, it has changed monumentally. And there is I don't think there's fear it's going to change back. I don't anymore.
Which is kind of sad, actually.
But there is like one
massacres,
little weird thing that happens in this episode that feels post 9/11.
Yeah.
Is all of the photography on the alleged traffic cameras used. She for some reason the model / actress / comedian had all of her traffic tickets in her locker at work, which is a strange detail.
Yeah, right.
One of them, I guess, she got right in front of her own house.
Yeah, that was a really big clue. Oh, look at this. Her car was in front of her house.
I simply didn't understand anything about that.
Yeah, but that seemed almost post 9/11. There'd be all this surveillance, which I don't remember ever being the case in New York in that period of time.
Yeah, and they had really good pixel resolution. it
Really
turned out,
good.
on the rental car.
Keep zooming in, zooming in, zooming
Things
in.
happened very quickly. Well,
You can't even do that with your 20 megapixel camera. You can't zoom in that far.
Well, it has to be mounted and steady. Otherwise, you get a little bit of a blur. Alex, what do you think of the idea of the broken window theory, which is, this where gentrification in the Giuliani years, where this all kind of comes from?
Well, we're living now this big backlash against the broken window theory, which comes actually out of Boston, comes out of the Kennedy School at Harvard. And Bill Bratton, who was deputy in New York, then went to Boston to be the chief of police, where he implemented broken window. I'm not a big expert on this. I mean, now people hate it. They see it as a fig leaf for racism. But of course, practically all criminal justice in America is sort of a fig leaf for racism. But these white guys at the Kennedy School dreamed up this broken window thing. And the idea, and I'm sure practically everyone listening to this understands it, is that if you fix small things in neighborhoods, and if you address small elements, like Giuliani famously went after the squeegee guys, who I remember quite well, who really weren't criminals at all. They're just hustlers, And anyway, the idea is, if you can clean up small things, then white people like me in the 1970s, these horrible white people will come in and feel cool about living in a place and gentrify it and. Starbucks comes right in.
Yeah. And then you get Michael Brown, who's selling loose cigarettes on the street, and another small thing that they tried to fix, and they killed him.
Right.
It only took 11 policemen to do. I mean, that was like so weird. There's like he's surrounded by policemen.
But these are the stop and frisk as a consequence of the broken window. I mean, all of these criminal justice things are, a lot of the episodes of this show that we talk about are you can tie directly to cracking down on the little things and it turning into big injustice.
Yeah, and the idea that this is going to be the tipping point where we're going to slide backwards. One of these tabloid crimes is going to bring back the battle days. I think post 9/11 it's kind of quaint because that is not the fear that we have about Times Square. Is that all of a sudden all the there's going to be pimps out in Times Square. In fact, I think probably the big fear we have is that you're going to get goosed by Elmo.
Oh, yeah. You're going to get forced to pay $20 for a picture with fake Wonder Woman.
Yeah,
exactly.
Some horrible Japanese next to you. What could be worse?
Well, that is going to do it for us. I want to thank our guest, Alex Beam. Alex, where can our listeners follow you?
Follow me. My website where I don't even bother to pay the hosting fees. That would be a start. Amazon, where they can buy my books for $1.05 or something. Whatever. Just Boston Globe, of
course. Pick up a copy of the Boston Globe.
Every Monday, I'm there ranting about
Humble brag.
Humble brag.
Yeah.
Rebecca Lavoie, how can our listeners follow you?
Oh, well, you can listen to one of my many podcasts, Crime Writers On, HGTV and Me, or follow me on Twitter at Reb Lavoie.
And you can track me on Twitter at Kevin P. Flynn. You can also tweet to us at Law & Order Pod or follow us on Instagram at These Are Their Stories Podcast. Our newsreader was Cy Frater. Our theme music was composed and performed by Uncanny Valleys, line editing by Henry Lavoie, content assistance from Travis Roy. Lily Flynn handles promotions. If you enjoyed this podcast, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps others discover this program just like you did. All clips in this podcast were used in compliance with U.S. Copyrights Act fair use exemption for criticism and commentary. Special thanks to the elite squad of the Law & Order Wiki community for preserving the evidence. If you want to know what episodes we're talking about in our upcoming shows, go to lawandorderpodcast.com. Sign up for our newsletter for a chance to be our next Law & Order Marathon winner. These Are Their Stories was recorded live in front of a studio audience.
Exactly.
And is produced by Partners in Crime Media.
Partners in Crime Media.